Welcome to the Appalachian Heritage Woodshop, woodworking with an Appalachian flair.
You have some abnormalities that occur that affect the grain. You have curly maple, bird's eye maple, tiger maple, and there's several others. And this is right here is an example of curly maple. This occurs while the tree is growing, and you can see the grain appears to curl. It's very wavy. With bird's eye, which I don't have any of right now, I'm out, there are little abnormalities which occur that looks like the eye of a bird's, and that's why it's called bird's eye. And then you have a tiger stripe maple. Now, they do not know exactly what causes the curly maple or the bird's eye maple or some of these others. If they knew, then they would reproduce that, because this type of abnormality in the grain is highly valued by the individual artist as opposed to the production facility, and they will pay a greater price for this. So if they knew exactly what caused it, then they would reproduce it to get a better yield from their woodlot crop. So that's some of the abnormalities that occur in the grain while the tree grows. Now there's some other abnormalities that occur while the tree is growing that affects the color of the wood. That is commonly referred to as mineral stain or chemical stain. Now I'll give you an example of that. Here is a mineral stain maple. If you notice all of the different colors, that is what is referred to as mineral stain. Now the National Hardwood Lumber Association first noted that as a defect in 1898. So it is considered a defect because it's not a consistent creamy color all the way through. Now again, what causes the mineral stain or the chemical stain of the maple? That is caused by a stress that is put on the tree from various factors that occur while the tree is growing, and more specifically when it is young. It can be an animal bump against it. It could be something that breaks off a limb. It could be something brushes against the bark and tears the bark. Or if a piece of property has been timbered and some of the big trees fall against the smaller trees, then those smaller trees grow in a stress form because they've been pushed and bent over. So all of this stress causes the different colors in the wood. So that's called mineral stain. Some people call it chemical stain. It's a very beautiful wood. Now let's look at some of the things that occur at the end of the life of the maple tree. One of the more common ones is Ambrosia Maple, and here's an example of that. See all these little holes right here with the brown streaks going out from it. The small holes are drilled into the tree by the ambrosia beetle. It goes through the outer bark, through the inner bark, and into the cambium layer. The cambium layer is a part of the tree that transports the nutrients up the tree. So once that hole is put into the cambium layer, then you get air into the cambium layer, and you have the ideal conditions for a fungus to grow. And the fungus, which thrives on the sugar in the tree, will grow, and it discolors the wood up and down the cambium layer. So anytime you see Ambrosia Maple, you'll see the small holes by the beetle, and then you'll see the brown streaks up and down from that. Now this particular board right here is book matched Ambrosia Maple. Now a lot of people seem to think it's caused from the ambrosia beetle bringing things into the tree, and that's not true. Tap hole maple is another abnormality, and this is where a person will drill a 1/2 inch hole into the side of a mature maple tree, put a spout in there and collect the sap. And then, of course, they boil that down to create maple syrup. Now, they will never use the same tap hole, so every year when they do that, they'll drill another hole. So they will drill several holes around the tree into the cambium layer. Eventually, when that tree is harvested and taken to the mill will cut off the butt section that has all of these large holes in it and throw it aside and not mill it. There are some individuals that will take that, mill it, dry it, and it creates beautiful wood that is called tap hole maple, and it is identical to the Ambrosia maple except for the size of the hole. Instead of a small 1/8 hole from an ambrosia beetle, it is a large 1/2 hole produced by a human drilling into a tree. But it creates the same condition and the same effect, and that's called tap hole maple. Now let's look at some of the abnormalities that occur as the wood is beginning to decay. Now the wood can decay from insects, worms and stuff, bugs, but it can also decay from mold and mildew and fungus. Spalted maple is an example of that. And here you have maple that has this dark streak through it, black streak. That is called a zone line. And what happens is as the wood is decaying, you have a fungus gets in it, which is a living organism, and it is actually eating on the wood. Now, because fungus is a living organism, it has three things it needs to survive. It needs a food source, which is the wood. It needs moisture, which is in the wood, and it needs air, needs oxygen, which is in the air. You remove any one of those three things, and you stop the growth of the fungus. And if you stop it soon enough before the wood gets real soft or punky, then you're left with some good stable wood, but it has some very unique zone lines in it. Now, the easiest way to stop the growth of the fungus is to remove the moisture. So there are different types of fungi that are more prevalent on different species of woods. So there's a lot of differences there. So if you want to see what some of this looks like in the board form, here's a large 8-quarter Ambrosia maple that I harvested on my farm. And here is some Ambrosia maple that has some mineral staining in it. Now what's really nice about this is you can actually have wood that incorporates several of these different types of defects. Now this is a good example, and that's why I really like this. This has the mineral stains, and if you look real close, right here is some zone lines, which is from the spalting process. And down here in this corner, right down here, is just a little bit of curl from the grain curling. And you can see it through here also. What I like to do is walk through my woods and keep an eye on my maple trees. And I will notice when some of the foliage begins to wither, turn a dull green, or not even grow. And that is the beginning of the end of that tree's cycle. So I'll watch it. It can die off pretty quick in just a year or two, or it could take 8 to 10 years. So I'll keep an eye on it, let it stand there until it is dead, and then let it stand for another year or 2 or 3, and then I cut it and harvest it, have it milled, dried, and then end up with some very beautiful, abnormal maple. So the next time you want a unique item built, think of some of the abnormalities that occur in the woods, and specifically maple, as a centerpiece for your woodworking project. This is Gerald Vance with the Appalachian Heritage Woodshop reminding you, be proud of your Appalachian heritage.